Hi everybody and welcome to this week's reading assembly. We'll start off this week as always with our Spelling Shed winners from this week, and what a week it has been on Spelling Shed. It has been very dramatic and very exciting, and it has gone down to the last day. So in bronze place we have Dylan from 3NW, who has gone into third place this week. Well done Dylan, absolutely brilliant. In silver place we have Noah from 5JA. Lovely to see your name up there, Noah. I don't think I've actually awarded you a certificate this year, so it's brilliant to see your name get up on the leaderboard. And in gold place this week we have got Finley from 6SP with an absolutely amazing score on Spelling Shed. I saw him at school today and I even asked him if he'd lived on Spelling Shed all weekend because his score was just phenomenal. Well done Finley, keep it up. If you don't get 10 out of 10 on your spelling test next week, I do not know what is going on, because you must know those spellings inside out and back to front. So well done Finley. So this week I thought it'd be a really good idea to see the best of the rest. So our top 10 on Spelling Shed from across the school. So in 10th place we have got Lucy from 5JA. In 9th place we've got Caden from 5JA. In 8th place we've got Shiraz from, yes you guessed it, 5JA. In 7th place we've got Ruby from 5JA. In 6th place we've got Ayan in 4BT. And in 5th place we've got Annabelle from 5JA, and Toby slips out of the top 3 for the first time in weeks from 3NW. So well done to the top 10, because you have also been on there an incredible amount of time over the past week. So well done, and it's brilliant to see such a massive amount of Mr. Armour's class logging on to Spelling Shed. Well done guys. So moving on to our class awards. In bronze position this week we have got 3NW. Well done 3NW, always nice to give you a certificate, and I've got to say every week I am always knocking on Miss Whitehead's door, presenting her with a massive amount of awards and prizes. So well done year 3, keep it up. Now there's been a very closely fought battle this week in Upper Key Stage 2 on Spelling Shed, and there's been a lot of rivalry being going around between Mr. Armour and Miss Smith, and I was receiving quite a few texts at the weekend on those teachers who were checking up on their Spelling Shed scores to see who was in the lead at that particular time. And I've got to say, over the course of the weekend the lead changed several times and it was getting pretty tense, alright? But there has been a clear winner tonight. So our silver award for class this week goes to 6SP. And 6SP, the amount of times you've been on Spelling Shed over the course of the past week has just been incredible, and it is largely down to Finley, who has been leading the way for 6SP. So well done guys. If a couple more of you had gone on, you might just have pipped Mr. Armour's class to it, because they only scored about 20 million points more than you guys. So keep it up. Up until Sunday night it was pretty tense. Our gold award this week goes to 5JA. Just an incredible score, and I've put the leaderboard this week on there just to show you where the other classes are in the school. So 5JA always at the top, always up there somewhere, but this week I think that's possibly the highest class score we've had in the history of Spelling Shed at High Crags. So well done 5JA, absolutely marvellous. And I know Mr. Armour set you a challenge this week. He set 5JA the challenge of scoring more points than himself, and if they scored more points than him, then he would get them a prize. And I think there's quite a few children that are owed prizes by Mr. Armour this week. So well done 5JA, and well done Mr. Armour as well, fantastic. In second place we've got 6RS. In third place we've got 3NW. In fourth place, massively down from 3NW, we've got 6HR, but nice to see that lots more people have been on there this week. Well done 6HR. 4BT are in 5th, 4JD are in 6th, 5PA down in 7th, 8th we've got 3SZ, and 9th we've got 3SZ, and then in 10th place we've got 2ZB. Okay, so well done everybody. Keep going on Spelling Shed, and hopefully next week somebody might be able to knock 5JA off the leaderboard. Okay, reading award now, and it is a double whammy, because this week 5JA have scored a massive 100% readers, And I've got to say, it's well deserved. 5JA, an absolute sweepstake this week for you. So not only did you get the gold award for spelling, you are also our gold reading class as well with a massive 100%. Well done, everybody. Looking at the rest of the classes in the school, we have got 1UR who are on 55% readers, so we need to step it up in there, please, year 1. 12NW, we've got 68% readers, still not fantastic. We need more people than that reading every single week. 2ZB, another 68%. We need to get reading there, please, Key Stage 1. 3SZ, wow, you've got 98%, so close. Excellent effort, Mrs. Aman's class. One person must have been the difference there, so make sure everybody reads, because it's taking 100% to beat the best class in the school, so like, everybody needs to read 3 times or more. 3MW, we're on 57%, which isn't a great score for you last week, guys. I don't know what happened there. 4BT, 96%, fantastic, Mr. Taylor's class. That's one of the best scores I've seen for you, so keep it up. 4JD, 78%, dearie me, we need to get reading in 4JD. 5PA, 82%, good, but not good enough to knock the year 5 class off the top spot. 6HR, 79%, disappointing. 6SP, 95%, I think again that might be 1 or 2 children that haven't read. So well done, 5JA, keep it up. And everybody else in the school, we need to read 3 times or more to get those reading percentages up, please. Okay? Right, on to Staff Reader of the Week now. Now, Staff Reader of the Week this week is Mrs. Bradley. Thank you, Mrs. Bradley, for being Staff Reader of the Week this week. And she has recommended the book to us, The Christmas Thesaurus. Okay, now here is Mrs. Bradley reading one of her books at home, really enjoying her books. And Mrs. Bradley has sent me not one picture, but more than one picture to show you just how much she loves reading. So thank you very much, Mrs. Bradley. Here is The Christmas Thesaurus, and she highly recommends this book to us. It's very festive. And I'm sure Mrs. Bradley, if you go and ask her about it, will tell you everything that she's been reading about in the Christmas Thesaurus. So it is by Tom Fletcher. Alright, so a good one for you all to check out there. Now, Mrs. Bradley is an avid reader, which means she's a very passionate reader, and she really, really enjoys reading. And she said she's enjoyed reading since being at primary school. And she sent me a picture of her collection of books that she has at home. She's looking very happy here next to her book collection, and I'm not surprised because it's a very neat and well organised book collection as well, Mrs. Bradley. So thank you very much for sending those pictures in for us, Mrs. Bradley. Mrs. Bradley is this week's Staff Reader of the Week, and she highly recommends The Christmas Thesaurus. Right, now on to our vote of the week. Now, last week we had 2 Year 4 texts to choose from. We had The House That Sailed Away and A Bear Called Paddington, and as you can see, A Bear Called Paddington absolutely walked it. Okay, we've got 154 votes to 53, and I've got to say, all the staff were talking about how surprising this was, because we thought that The House That Sailed Away sounded really, really exciting, but Paddington won by a landslide. And when I spoke to my class about why Paddington won, they said that it had been made recently into a film, and they all really enjoyed the film and they wanted to read the book because they didn't realise it was also a book. So we have got some of our amazing Year 4 staff reading A Bear Called Paddington for us. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, chapter 1, please look after this bear. Mr. and Mrs. Brown met Paddington on a railway platform. In fact, that was how he came to have such an unusual name for a bear, for Paddington was the name of the station. The Browns were there to meet their daughter Judy, who was coming home from school for the holidays. It was a warm summer day, and the station was covered with people on their way to the seaside. Trains were humming, loudspeakers blaring, porters rushing around and shouting at one another, and altogether there was so much noise that Mr. Brown, who saw him first, had to tell his wife several times before she understood. "A bear? On Paddington Station?" Mrs. Brown looked at her husband in amazement. "Don't be silly, Henry, it can't be." Mr. Brown adjusted his glasses. "But there it is!" he insisted. "I distinctly saw it, over there, near the bicycle rack. It was wearing a funny kind of hat." Without waiting for a reply, he got hold of his wife's arm and pushed her through the crowd, round a trolley laden with chocolate and cups of tea, past a bookstall, and through a gap in a pile of suitcases towards the lost property office. "There you are," he announced triumphantly, pointing towards the corner. "I told you so." Mrs. Brown followed the direction of his arm and dimly made out a small, furry object in the shadows. It seemed to be sitting on some kind of suitcase, and around its neck there was a label with some writing. The suitcase was old and battered, and on the side, in large letters, were the words, "Wanted on voyage." Mrs. Brown clutched at her husband. "Why, Henry!" she exclaimed. "I believe you are right after all. It is a bear." She peered at it more closely. It seemed a very unusual kind of bear. It was brown in colour, a rather dirty brown, and it was wearing a most odd-looking hat with a wide brim, just as Mr. Brown said. From beneath the brim, 2 large round eyes stared back at her. Seeing that something was expected of it, the bear stood up and politely raised its hat, revealing 2 black ears. "Good afternoon," it said in a small, clear voice. Good afternoon," replied Mr. Brown doubtfully. There was a moment of silence. The bear looked at them inquiringly. "Can I help you?" Mr. Brown looked rather embarrassed. "Well, no. As a matter of fact, we were wondering if we could help you."
Mrs. Brown bent down. "You're a very small bear," she said. The bear puffed out its chest. "I'm a very rare sort of bear," he replied importantly. "There aren't many of us left where I come from." "And where is that?" asked Mrs. Brown. The bear looked round carefully before replying. "Darkest Peru. I'm not really supposed to be here at all. I'm a stowaway." "A stowaway?" Mr. Brown lowered his voice and looked anxiously over his shoulder. He almost expected to see a policeman standing behind him, with a notebook and a pencil, taking everything down. "Yes," said the bear. "I emigrated, you know." A sad expression came into his eyes. "I used to live with my Aunt Lucy in Peru, but she had to go into a home for retired bears." "You don't mean to say you've come all the way from South America by yourself?" exclaimed Mrs. Brown. The bear nodded. "Aunt Lucy always said she wanted me to emigrate when I was old enough. That's why she taught me to speak English." "But whatever did you do for food?" asked Mr. Brown. "You must be starving." Bending down, the bear unlocked the suitcase with a small key, which it also had round its neck, and brought out an almost empty glass jar. "I ate marmalade," he said rather proudly. "Bears like marmalade, and I lived in a lifeboat." "But what are you going to do now?" said Mr. Brown. "You can't just sit on Paddington Station waiting for something to happen." "Oh, I shall be all right, I expect." The bear bent down to do up its case again. As he did so, Mrs. Brown caught a glimpse of the writing on the label. It said simply, "Please look after this bear. Thank you." She turned appealingly to her husband. "Oh, Henry, what shall we do? We can't just leave him here. There's no knowing what might happen to him. London's such a big place when you've nowhere to go. Can't he come and stay with us for a few days?" Mr. Brown hesitated. "But Mary, dear, we can't take him. Not just like that. After all..."
"After all what?" Mrs. Brown's voice had a firm note to it. She looked down at the bear. "He is rather sweet, and he'd be such company for Jonathan and Judy, even if it's only for a little while. They'd never forgive us if they knew you'd left him here." "It all seems highly irregular," said Mr. Brown, doubtfully. "I'm sure there's a law about it." He bent down. "Would you like to come and stay with us?" he asked. "That is," he added hastily, not wishing to offend the bear, "if you've nothing else planned." The bear jumped and his hat nearly fell off with excitement. "Oh, yes, please. I should like that very much. I've nowhere to go, and everyone seems in such a hurry." "Well, that's settled then," said Mrs. Brown, before her husband could change his mind. "And you can have marmalade for breakfast every morning, and—" She tried hard to think of something else that bears might like. "Every morning?" The bear looked as if it could hardly believe its ears. "I only had it on special occasions, at home. Marmalade's very expensive in darkest Peru." "Then you shall have it every morning, starting tomorrow," continued Mrs. Brown. "And honey on Sunday." A worried expression came over the bear's face. "Will it cost very much?" he asked. "You see, I haven't very much money." "Of course not. We wouldn't dream of charging you anything. We shall expect you to be one of the family, shan't we, Henry?" Mrs. Brown looked at her husband for support. "Of course," said Mr. Brown. "By the way," he added, "if you are coming home with us, you'd better know our names. This is Mrs. Brown, and I'm Mr. Brown." The bear raised its hat politely, twice. "I haven't really got a name," he said. "Only a Peruvian one, which no one can understand." "Then we'd better give you an English one," said Mrs. Brown. "It'll make things much easier." She looked round the station for inspiration. "It ought to be something special," she said thoughtfully, as she...
Okay, we're ready when you are.
Spoke an engine standing in one of the platforms, gave a loud wail, and a train began to move. "I know what," she exclaimed. "We found you on Paddington Station, so we'll call you Paddington." "Paddington?" The bear repeated it several times to make sure. "It seems a very long name." "Quite distinguished," said Mr. Brown. "Yes, I like Paddington as a name. Paddington it shall be." Mrs. Brown stood up. "Good. Now, Paddington, I have to meet our little daughter Judy off the train. She's coming home from school. I'm sure you must be thirsty after your long journey, so you can go along to the buffet with Mr. Brown, and he'll buy you a nice cup of tea." Paddington licked his lips. "I'm very thirsty," he said. "Sea water makes you thirsty." He picked up his suitcase, pulled his hat down firmly over his head, and waved a paw politely in the direction of the buffet. "After you, Mr. Brown." Thank you, Paddington," said Mr. Brown. "Now, Henry, look after him," Mrs. Brown called after them. "And for goodness sake, when you get a moment, take that label off his neck. It makes him look like a parcel. I'm sure he'll get put in a luggage van or something if a porter sees him." The buffet was crowded when they entered, but Mr. Brown managed to find a table for two in a corner. By standing on a chair, Paddington could just rest his paws comfortably on the glass top. He looked around with interest while Mr. Brown went to fetch the tea. The sight of everyone eating reminded him of how hungry he felt. There was a half-eaten bun on the table, but just as he reached out his paw, a waitress came up and swept it into a pan. "You don't want that, dearie," she said, giving him a friendly pat. "You don't know where it's been." Paddington felt so empty, he didn't really mind where it had been, but he was much too polite to say anything. "Well, Paddington," said Mr. Brown, as he placed two steaming cups of tea on the table and a plate piled high with cakes, "how's that to be going on with?" Paddington's eyes glistened. "It's very nice, thank you," he exclaimed, eyeing the tea doubtfully. "But—"
"It's rather hard drinking out of a cup. I usually get my head stuck, or else my hat falls in and makes it taste nasty." Mr. Brown hesitated. "Then you'd better give your hat to me. I'll pour the tea into a saucer for you. It's not really done in the best circles, but I'm sure no one will mind just this once." Paddington removed his hat and laid it carefully on the table, while Mr. Brown poured out the tea. He looked hungrily at the cakes, in particular at a large cream and jam one, which Mr. Brown placed on a plate in front of him. "There you are, Paddington," he said. "I'm sorry they haven't any marmalade ones, but they were the best I could get." "I'm glad I emigrated," said Paddington, as he reached out a paw and pulled the plate nearer. "Do you think anyone would mind if I stood on the table to eat?" Before Mr. Brown could answer, he had climbed up and placed his right paw firmly on the bun. It was a very large bun, the biggest and stickiest Mr. Brown had been able to find, and in a matter of moments most of the inside found its way onto Paddington's whiskers. People started to nudge each other and began staring in their direction. Mr. Brown wished he had chosen a plain, ordinary bun, but he wasn't very experienced in the ways of bears. He stirred his tea and looked out of the window, pretending he had tea with a bear on Paddington Station every day of his life. "Henry!" The sound of his wife's voice brought him back to earth with a start. "Henry, whatever are you doing to that poor bear? Look at him! He's covered all over with cream and jam." Mr. Brown jumped up in confusion. He seemed rather hungry, he answered lamely.
Thank you very much there, Mr. Taylor, Miss Corser, Miss Dawson and Miss Bailey. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for getting involved and joining in with a bear called Paddington.